Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for spending this sunny and beautiful late afternoon together with us at the Open Mic Next in Health event. Today's discussion will be about apps on prescription, and I'm very much looking forward to a great discussion and hearing the voices of a physician, of a startup founder, and of a patient who are dealing with this on a daily basis. My name is Rael. I'm community manager at the Switzerland Innovation Park Basel area here on Novartis campus, and we're on a mission to create a community of health tech enthusiasts here on the Novartis campus. We activate these ecosystems together with Day One Healthcare Innovation, and I'm very happy that my colleague Ursula, who is curating this event series, is here on stage together with me. Before I hand over to you, Ursula, I would just like to mention that, as usual, we are using Mentimeter, so everyone on site and everyone online is most welcome to use the app and sending the questions. So our moderator, Zero, is receiving the questions and will bring them in the Q&A. But for everyone on site, of course, you're also welcome. Then you bring in your questions live during the Q&A at the end of the session. Ursula, over to you.
Thank you so much, and welcome everyone here in the room, but also online to the many people that is following from all over the world. So thanks for your time. I hope you find this evening as an experience where you can learn something, where you can exchange, where you can network. As Rahel said, I'm Ursula Costa. I'm the director at Day One. We are an accelerator specialized on health tech here in Basel. And just if there is any startup founder in the room working on clinical development topics, just so you know, we have an open call for application. You can find our mastermind behind the program, Cecile, here later on. So deadline closes in only a few days. I don't want to spend more of your time talking about what we do on Day One, but I want to make sure you enjoy our great speakers. So I have the pleasure of calling on stage today Ciro Gottardi, CEO of Peak Spirit, Maren Schintz, Type 1 Diabetes Patient Innovation Manager at Diabetes Center Bern, Ulrich Müllner, co-founder and chairman of the board at Dogio, and Manuel Puchu, practicing physician and digital health expert. And I hope we get to enjoy 4 very different perspectives and points of view on a topic that affects many of us and a topic that has been around for many, many years now, which is apps on prescription and how do we go beyond the pill. And without more ado, I'm going to hand over to Ciro. Please, thank you all for joining us today. Really looking forward.
Thank you very much, Ursula and Rahel, for the nice introduction. Also, a warm welcome from my side to all the people that made it in person, but of course also all the people that are joining virtually. So, as already mentioned by Rahel, today we're diving into a very fascinating topic, the topic of apps on prescription. Did you know that in Germany alone, in the last few years, almost 500,000 apps were prescribed? So this was done under the so-called DiGA reimbursement model. As many of you might be aware, it's called Digitale Gesundheitsanwendung, and it's one of the first systems in Europe to really reimburse apps that are prescribed as therapeutics or as diagnostics. So the almost 500,000 prescriptions might sound like a huge number to some of you, but to others it might sound rather low. The opinions on the apps on prescriptions vary widely. Some believe they are a groundbreaking way that will revolutionize medicine as we know it very briefly, very quickly, while others think the way we're approaching this topic doesn't really lead to successful outcomes. But why is this divergence in opinion? So the topic is really, really complex for innovating teams. I mean, one needs to consider reimbursement, go-to-market, regulatory, quality, data security, accessibility, physician and patient adaptation, and many, many more. But before I move on, I'd like to briefly introduce myself. Again, my name is Ciro Gottardi. I have a bit over 7 years of experience in the health tech and life science field. I'm a biologist and economist by training. I started my career at GSK in Big Pharma, and then I changed to Peak Spirit. What I'm doing at Peak Spirit is supporting ventures in the digital health and in the health tech field in general with topics like go-to-market, sales, and market validation. I have the pleasure of working with dozens of digital health companies and also prescribed apps on a yearly basis, and therefore I know quite well many of the hurdles they face when it comes to being successful with their solution. So many of the teams I collaborate with are very much overwhelmed by all those aspects I was just mentioning before. So how is a small startup supposed to handle regulatory reimbursement, market entry, and all the things? And I'd like to tell you 2 examples of teams I collaborated with some of the hurdles they are facing. So one of the teams, they were applying for their DIGA approval, and they expected it in 1 to 2 months when I started talking to them. And they said, I asked them, well, how is go-to-market moving on? What is happening there? And they were like, yeah, well, we will be accepted, and then the doctors will come to us and they will start prescribing the application. So 1 or 2 months passed, they got their approval, but nothing happened. This company almost faced bankruptcy because they underestimated that even after years of existence, most of the doctors in Germany still don't know what a DIGA is. So they underestimated that it can take months or even years to make doctors successfully prescribe your digital solution. So this is one of the issues I've been seeing. And another one I want to quickly showcase is a Swiss startup that actually wanted to pilot with a very renowned Swiss hospital. And they got in contact with the CIO. The CEO was very, very excited. He said, I want to start a pilot with you as soon as possible. The startup got excited as well. They met for a second meeting. And in this second meeting, the CIO showed up with a stack of paper this big. And he said, these are the compliance requirements you guys need to fulfill. As soon as you have them, we can get started. It's been over a year now, and the project hasn't started. I mean, how should a very small team overcome those hurdles when looking at all the other aspects that they need to consider as well? So I just mentioned some of the reasons I'm very glad I was invited to this event. And moreover, we have some great experts from the patient side, from the physician side, and from the solution provider side that will be in this panel discussion. And I'm very happy that they get the chance to introduce themselves as well. So Maren, please tell us about yourself.
Thank you so much, Ciro. My name is Maren Schins. I'm Innovation Manager in MedTech, especially in diabetes technology at the Diabetes Center Bern, because I also live with diabetes type 1 by myself. And as someone who's living with a chronic condition, I know very firsthand about the challenges, what a daily healthcare management can bring with you, and how prescribed apps can change these on a daily basis, and how prescribed apps can help us patients. But, however, assessing these apps is hard, not only for the startups to get the reimbursement and etc., also for the patient, because you have not only the technical barriers, you have also a huge lack of unawareness. And also, it's like, I'm really stunned about this huge number, because I only think, especially also for normal healthcare apps, it's like a huge, it's like impossible to find the right solution for you as a patient, because you're really, you're seeing so many solutions out there and you do not really find the right for you, or you're not quite sure what is really the right solution for you. And also due to no reimbursement today, it's like, okay, should I really take should I really pay for this solution? Should I really try it out? Probably it don't fit for me. So therefore, I'm super happy to discuss probably today how we can implement prescribed apps in the daily routine for patients and HCPs.
Thank you very much, Maren. That was a very nice introduction from the patient point of view. What I'm also interested in is an introduction from the physician point of view. So Manuel, please introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your perception of the topic.
Thanks, Cyril. Well, my name is Manuel Puncho. I'm a medical doctor. I'm a general practitioner by training, and I had the privilege of working in various fields in my career. So in the hospital setting, in the practice setting. I've spent a couple of years now in the telemedicine setting, so really applying digital health from a physician's perspective and a business perspective. And now I'm back in my own practice. And all of my life I've been tech addict and a tech lover, and I like to play with technology and try out new things, which is not too common to physicians, to many of my colleagues, unfortunately. But I've been always trying to find out and to try and see how to implement new technologies, new ideas and innovations into my daily practice, into treating patients, communicating with patients. And so there's some ups and downs, but even though I'm actively trying to pursue and search for options to integrate this is still a challenging topic for me in my day-to-day work.
Thank you very much, Manuel. Maybe Ulrich can help you in integrating solutions easier into your practice. Please, Ulrich, tell us about yourself and about what you're doing.
Sure. Yeah, good evening. My name is Ulrich Müllner, co-founder and chairman of the board. That's my official title of the new company I'm representing today, which is called Docyo. Docyo is an apps on prescription company, which is actually a year old. So we are targeting exactly this market that Cyril was describing, and we can tell you a bit more later what we are specifically trying to achieve. Maybe briefly about myself. I have a PhD in biochemistry, so I'm technically a molecule person, so to say, and we can also discuss this later, what this means in the journey. Then I joined a consulting firm, BCG, Boston Consulting, and then I joined Novartis, so the company where we have the pleasure to be here today. At Novartis, I had actually two roles. One was I was in charge of corporate strategy at Novartis, but more importantly for my journey now and my position now, I was in charge globally for health tech partnerships. So my job was to fly around the globe from Silicon Valley to wherever, find interesting tech companies and set up partnerships with Novartis with the goal to build so-called beyond the pill, around the drug solutions, in particular for patients with chronic diseases. At that time, Novartis was launching a new product for heart failure patients called Entresto. And my job was to find solutions to complement that, because we were launching Entresto at that time in a, I would say, genericized environment, and you had a very innovative drug, but you were also accountable to make sure that patients are taking these medications. And one way is, of course, to look for technology that patients adhere to treatment, that you can follow through, yet you can also capture real-world data. All of this we tried to accomplish. And then fast forward, I decided to join the entrepreneurial side of the world. I joined my co-founder Yves Nordmann. We founded a few companies together. One is Doc Health, which is at the interface of patients and physicians developing digital solutions. And out of this, we created a new company, as I said, Docyo, which is developing apps on prescription, particularly targeting patients or supporting patients with chronic diseases like metabolic syndrome, respiratory diseases, and so forth.
Thank you very much, Ulrich. So one thing I was in particular interested in is how doctors in Switzerland are managing this topic. Because one can argue about if there is a reimbursement system in place in Switzerland. In most cases, it's very hard or impossible to get reimbursement for apps on prescription right now. And I would like to hear from you, Manuel. How are you working with your patients at the moment? What solutions are you implementing, and what are the challenges you're facing there?
Well, that's a big question. So you have to start somewhere. So what am I trying to cover? I'm trying to cover the most common and the most low-hanging fruits here. So let's say for patients with hypertension or with suspected hypertension, I'm applying a digital solution. I'm using a bracelet that is not relying on that's a cuffless technology, that is working with a connected app. And this is what I recommend to patients and what I sometimes also rent or gift to patients for a specific time frame. And the struggle here usually is to actually access the data, because so what is happening? Either the patient has to install the app and manage it all by himself, or I have to have a specific device just for this one solution that I have to manage and invest time and devices for this. And so there are solutions that are, from a technological and medical perspective, very, very interesting, but actually really using them with patients requires a couple of extra steps.
Mm-hmm. So I think one of the biggest challenges also, as an HCP, there exist dozens or hundreds of solutions. You cannot manage all of them at the same time, right? You and your doctor's office cannot learn for 50 different solutions how to use them. It's very hard to implement them in your practice information system. What is a future you would hope for to solve this problem?
Well, what I'm wishing for is to have that all-in-one solution where I have my dashboard that is notifying me of new alerts and measurements, and which is telling me, oh, there's something new you can try, and you just have to click here, and it's messaging the patients that use it, but that's not reality. Every solution with a technical device attached to it, and also digital health apps themselves, they all have their own platforms, dashboards, APIs, data privacy statements, consent management procedures, and so it's all around how to get the information together. So my wish would be to have that done.
Could you describe this as a real-time electronic health record, where you could activate the modules for the different patients and like get the data like real-time in the ideal case?
Probably. I mean, I don't know what real-time would mean. If I would then have to be on the screen 24/7 to not miss any alert, and you should have seen that. You could have. So I'm not too sure if I would want this type of responsibility, but I'd like at least to be able to access it anytime where I want it without having to manually pull the things of the various sources.
Mm-hmm. So data integration and not just being another solution is surely also a huge challenge for you, Ulrich. How are you? What do you see there, and where do you see low-hanging fruits for solution providers?
So first of all, you have, of course, to adhere to certain standards and regulations and requirements. So if you are playing the apps on prescription field, first of all, you have to be a medical device. So you can't just be an app. You have to be at least a Class 1 device. You have to adhere to certain regulatory standards like ISO certifications. There are certain data security, data privacy standards you have to adhere to, interoperability standards you have to adhere to. So you are playing in a very regulated environment, which probably for many who come just from the software field is a totally new area. For me, from the pharma area, it's like normal that you are playing in a regulated environment. Also, if you come from the med device space, it's also normal. But I've seen many companies, and probably also some of those you're working with, this is a totally new field for them. So this is a very important regulated environment. And yes, it has pros and cons, and sometimes we are not that happy about this, but they're really trying to address exactly what you are looking for, that we have common standards, common, I would say, denominators. And if we talk about Germany, which is the market that you were referring to, where you have now a clear path towards reimbursement. In Germany, the idea is that you have a central repository for data, which is the electronic patient record of the patient, called EPA, which as of next year will be mandatory, or not mandatory, but like an opt-out procedure where patients have to actively get out of the EPA, so to say. So the idea of the German legislators is that you will probably have 80+% very soon of German patients in this EPA, which means in Germany like 60 million plus or so being in this system. And then you have one central data hub where also, for example, the DIGAs have to play in their data. And then you as a physician could then access this EPA and hopefully derive meaningful insights from that. We are still at the beginning of this journey, but this is one, I would say, structural idea of the German legislators to do so. In Switzerland, unfortunately, you have the EPD, which is aiming at the same thing, but the fundamental difference is the EPD is not mandatory, so there's no opt-out, and to my understanding, you have like maybe 5% of the Swiss population, if at all, having an EPD, and therefore this data play, which is, I think we all agree, is the future of healthcare, cannot happen if only 5% of the population are using such a repository. And this, I think, is a fundamental change in Germany, and by the way, also Austria, with their ELGA, which is the Austrian EPD, they have also an opt-out and have like 90+% of the Austrian population being part of that. So I see this kind of, I would say, gentle push by the government of pushing patients into these systems as one important requirement, and then of course surrounded by regulatory standards that make sure that you have data interoperability and other solutions being in place, so to say.
We were also talking about like the HCPs managing those 50 or 100 different solutions that all look different, they are built or structured differently. Ulrich, do you see a consolidation in the future where you have one approach and everything is looking quite similar to make it more usable?
So it depends on which hat I'm now having on and talking about, because I have a second hat which exactly is building such a platform which is aiming at an homogenized and you know one size fits all, if you want, or kind of one platform solving many use cases at the physician-patient interface. So from that perspective, I would say yes, and absolutely we have to have this. From a apps on prescription perspective, so the hat I'm having on here on this picture, you have to see apps on prescription a little bit, in my view, as the analogus of a drug, let's say. So you have like really a new form of treating patients. Mm-hmm. And there you also don't see consolidation, so to say, of drugs. You have still a drug for, or 5 drugs or 100 drugs for diabetes and 50 drugs for hypertension and so forth. So from that perspective, I don't see that. And I would rather say this new class of treatment options has first to be established. I think you said this, that it's still a very nascent industry, if you want. But once established, then we can probably talk about some sort of consolidation. But it's probably more like in a case-by-case situation where you prescribe the best solution for a patient, for a given patient, so to say.
Okay, thank you very much. So now I want to lead the discussion into a bit of different direction. So Maren, you've been living with diabetes for many years now, through your job, but also through your personal life. You've come in contact with many innovative solutions. How is it living with a chronic disease and seeing a lot of different solutions, trying them? How do you feel as a patient?
Big question. I only want to mention first that I would love to be pushed in a system where my data would be used in a good way. So it's like also these big rumors that we patients are so afraid of being transparent and that our data is used. I really have talked to, not the case, to a patient that are so afraid of a chronic condition, that are so afraid of this, do not see the advantage of this. So therefore, please push me. But yeah, in the end, it's like, living with diabetes has changed a lot during the last years and the last century because of such great innovations and great technology out there. So I think my main go-to example is like that I had diabetes nearly 15 years before I got my first CGM. So the continuous glucose measurement system I'm now wearing on my arm. And before I got the first CGM, I have to take 60,000 finger pricks to measure my blood sugar on a daily basis. And this is completely life-changing after I've got my first CGM, because I now can have these real-time, more or less real-time, but really daily 24-hour data I can use. I've got alarm systems during the night. And probably you can also imagine how frightening it can be to go to bed not knowing what will happen during the night with your blood sugar. And this was really life-changing to have this technology, and also this technology in combination of a medical device app, so to say. So therefore it's really, this was really great. In the end, as an innovation manager, I see so often so many solutions out there, not really coming from a patient perspective or from a user-centric perspective, and not really doing this together in co-creation with the patients. And in addition then to these thousands of apps out there, as a patient to find the right solution for you, it's really difficult. And also to get solution that's really useful for you in the day, because I often say, so chronic conditions cost lifetime, also diabetes. And if a technology or an application do not bring me more lifetime than it costs me in the end, I do not use it. And in the end, I have to admit, so as an innovation manager, I really use not quite a few of them, because at the moment there's not really many solutions out there that bring me more lifetime than it costs me. And this, so often I have the feeling, is also because that the co-creation is missing, and that the patient is too late involved in the complete process of establishing such solutions.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a bit about the topic of reimbursement as well? How is it, as a patient, you see 10 solutions that might help you, but you need to pay out of pocket for all of them? How does it feel like, and what would you wish for in the future?
I think the main problem starts that no one is speaking with you around this. So I do not want to shame someone, but I was not one time in my physician office speaking about technology. So no one is really approaching us as patients that there's something new out there, that we can try something. If you do not find this, also due to community and due to probably social media, and there's a lot of active community out there in diabetes, but in the interaction with the HCPs, this takes not place at the moment. And therefore you have to find it for yourself. And if you then get a recommendation by other people with living with diabetes, of course you see value in it and probably try it out and pay it out of pocket. But if you see like a new solution, you're not quite sure if this is the right fit for me, then you will not use it or you will not use it for long.
Mm-hmm. What are drivers? I mean, in my line of work, I collaborate with many startups that have a very long time to market. They don't have much money to get there, so they first want to go to the out-of-pocket market for the people to pay by themselves. And in the DACH region, this is often not very successful, because people are used that the insurance pays for everything. So there's a huge gap at the moment, while we have no system to quickly reimburse those innovative solutions. And what I want to know, maybe from Maren and from Manuel, what do you see as like low-hanging fruits of solutions that really make the patient say, yes, I'm going to invest in this, yes, I'm going to pay by myself?
So first, I forgot to mention also that I'm super happy and super grateful for our insurance system, and that I'm alive and sitting here. So, but in the end, this is also very cost effective for me. So also in our Switzerland environment, my chronic condition costs money. And if you are then also, and of course, if I find a solution that I think it's worth for me, I will take also this out of pocket money. but it's like everything comes on the top. You have the feeling you have to pay for your insulin, you have the feeling you have to pay for everything in addition, what makes it like a good all-day living. And then you're thinking, okay, why should I also now pay for this? And yeah, this is like, I think the feeling so many have. Also with these, you have to convince so many people first to try it out, because we are in this tech area. We are well known of this solution and the benefits the solution has. There's a lot of millions of people out there, they are not so into this, and you have to convince them and you have to bring it to them. And I have the feeling that one of the channels could be HCP conversations, could be, of course, also crowd intelligence by social media and communities, but the first main entry point would be the doctor's office, I have the feeling, because you then get also the trust, hey, this is really something I could try.
Thank you.
So for the doctor, it's the easiest way to just write a medication on a small piece of paper, sign it, and done, next patient. So talking about what other options there are, and that they need to be paid out of pocket. Sorry to mention that. So this is time. This is mostly convincing patients to do something many probably wouldn't want, or it would be hard to convince them, and even time convincing the patient is not really reimbursed because time is so scarce. So this is probably at the moment more on the patient's side, and the pressure is coming from there. So what I'm seeing and what I hear, what users, patients are looking for is the immediate feedback. So if I see something is working, if I see there's a change, something has changed through using something, be it taking a pill or using an app or using some other device, this is, for me, probably key to convince people.
Thank you very much. Ulrich, do you have anything to add?
To out of pocket. There's a reason why we're targeting a market where we have a clear path to reimbursement. But no, I would agree. I mean, out of pocket in general, at least in our region, is a tough one, because people are used to reimbursement, to a situation where, let's say, government and or insurance companies are paying. I mean, of course, there are a few exceptions, like in the area of aesthetics and some others, or some, let's say, diseases which have a certain stigma also, then people are willing to pay out of pocket, or if it's, let's say, for their kids and so forth. So there are certain areas where people are willing to self-pay. Schizophrenically, not for their own health. If it's a chronic disease, they're paying for cigarettes and alcohol out of pocket, so to say, but not for health. So I think this also goes to the fact that I think many things that patients have to do are obvious, right? I mean, you should just walk more, eat healthier, sleep more, and so forth. This is all known to everyone, and yet nobody's really doing it, or at least most are not really doing it. So therefore, this is, I think, the big challenge. At the end of the day, there has to be a clear win-win, so to say, for everyone in the system. Win for the physicians to prescribe it. Either it's because they save time, or of course feel that their patients are better supported. Of course, for the patients, that they feel a solution is helping them. And maybe we didn't talk yet, or haven't mentioned yet, what is the big advantage of digital solutions compared to, for example, medications. I think from my point of view, there are 2 or 3 big advantages that other treatment options don't have. Number one is you're trying to activate something that none of the other ways is trying to do. We discussed about this over lunch when we had our discussion where we met each other for the first time. And there's a lot of opportunities in behavior change. And none of the medications is really targeting this and activating this. So this is a big plus of digital solutions. I think this is number one. I think number 2 is that digital solutions can overcome the big black hole, if you want, where patients are not seen and treated. You have many diseases like psychiatry disease and so forth, where you have a lot of challenges to find your physician, because the next physician appointment is maybe 6 months out, maybe 9 months out, maybe a year out. So what do you do if you have a severe psychiatric disease? Maybe you have risk of suicide, and you see your specialist maybe only in 6 months. This might be too late. And this is exactly where digital solutions come in and bridge this I would say, gap, so to say, of healthcare delivery. So for me, this is why we are in this space, because we feel fundamentally digital solutions will help patients, will also eventually hopefully help physicians on their journey. But of course, there are many puzzle pieces to solve. But if it would be easy, I think then it would not make fun. So we are also here to tackle that. And there are lots of opportunities to do so, and also to benefit the patients eventually.
Mm-hmm. So, from my knowledge in the Swiss healthcare system, we spent in 2019, I think, between 1 or 2% of the whole budget on prevention. The rest goes to treatment and diagnosis. You touched the topic of prevention briefly, and it's obvious. If we want to live in a sustainable healthcare system, we need to do much more. And digital solutions with health literacy, patient education, everything around it is a great opportunity to go there. So what do you think we need to increase our efforts on prevention and to make this a more often used solution for all the people, not only the patients, but also the healthy population? Yes.
It's also a tough one, because we have a system that fixes broken, if you want, conditions, like patients who are already sick and not paying into preventing. Again, we discussed this over lunch. To be a bit fair towards the payers, I mean, it's always easy to blame them and say, look, you guys should pay more on prevention and less on that. If you talk to payers, they also tell you, look, we each day get 50, 100 proposals for a preventive solution, and show us that it's really, let's say, helping the patients, and of course down the road also saving costs for us, because at the end of the day they are in a business and they can't just spend money on crazy stuff because it's preventative, and at the end of the day it's not helping. So they are facing this let's say, promises, but you also have to bring the evidence that a preventive solution is down the road improving the health status of patients, but also, quite frankly, bringing in return on investment for an insurer who is investing into this preventive solution. Mm-hmm. And I think there the challenge or the job is on the, let's say, solution providers, but also the ones that are claiming prevention is important, to prove that prevention has a value. And for this, you need clinical studies, you need real-world evidence studies, and so forth. And I'm a fundamental believer of prevention, don't get me wrong, but you also have to bring the evidence to the table that there's indeed value to the patients and to the system, I would say.
May I jump here? I was on a conference lately, I was hearing the saying, there's no hero in prevention. So we doctors, we all want to be heroes on the emergency room, and I've been there also, but prevention is tough, because all trials and all measures we take, they evolve around measurements. So how do you measure? You measure somebody's sick, and you have some biomarkers or some parameters that you measure, like the heart rate, like inflammation parameters, and then you treat, and then you measure again. Did you have an effect? But how do you measure health? And how do you measure and take into account, okay, I'm still healthy 1 year after. I mean, we could maybe do that 2 years after, but like a sustainable a trial to see what measurements specifically are really protecting health on a long-term perspective is really a tough thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
I want to bring a little bit of a positive note to this, because I have really the feeling that this is changing on a societal level, but also for the insurances. And what I think it's a main driver here is really data, because data brings knowledge, and knowledge brings behavior change. Because if I know that some behaviors leads to some situations are not good for me, so every time I'm snacking in the evening, I have a bad night, if I really see this on a CGM or whatever, this is really so much more clearer and the roadmap is so much more there. And I have the feeling the more we are going into this data area, it's not in any case good. There are also some bad things around this, but this will have a huge thing, I have the feeling, for prevalence and making this better.
One thing I think is also important that, I mean, prevention, the short-term, mid-term, and maybe long-term prevention, but how are you going to measure the outcomes 40 years in the future? I mean, no company will invest in this, or probably. Do you think, and this question is to all of you, that the state should invest more in long-term prevention research and gather more data about it?
Obviously, well,
No-brainer. No-brainer.
everybody's saying no. Okay. No, of course,
Yes.
we should invest more into staying healthy, but I'm still thinking now we have our health insurance is focused on disease. It's not about staying healthy. So we have not a healthcare, we have a sick care system. And it's not that I want to value that. I mean, it's just as it is. And so our insurance model is saying, okay, if you're sick, if you have a medical issue, then whatever is needed to diagnose and to treat it and to help you live with it, the insurance is paying for that. But staying healthy, whatever that means, is something we need to manage ourselves at the moment.
I mean, maybe to add on this, what is currently being tried, or what is now the big next thing, is this big data lake or data room in the European Union, if you want, right? So the idea is to really bring all the data together to get really big insights into big questions. So for me, it is also, of course, an opportunity to see the value in preventive measures. So if you once have this data lake, and of course with AI and whatever the buzzword these days is, we hopefully see patterns that give us insights into what works, what doesn't work, of course complemented with cohort studies, with registries and so forth. So I think you said data is important, but there are also, of course, now measures underway to get those data, let's say, collected, compiled, analyzed. This could have been done probably decades ago already, like we probably lost some time. Also, there's maybe only now technical capabilities like cloud computing and so forth, where you can really bring those data together. But we should also now use this opportunity and gain insights from this. And you said you don't need to be pushed for data to be shared. That's good news. Then maybe share this view with the European Commission, because the data, let's say, standards sometimes are a bit restrictive. But I think by and large, there are also right steps in the right direction, which hopefully make our healthcare system on a global level much, much better, I would say.
Mm-hmm. One thing I also wanted to ask you, Ulrich, is you're preparing your solution for market entry and reimbursement in Germany right now. How long does it take on average? I mean, obviously each solution is different. From the project start until you reach the market nowadays.
If you say project start, was really the idea, or what is project start in your view?
When you have a committed team that starts working on it.
Which is the idea level, but
yeah.
Well, I would say at least 2 years, if not longer, because as I said, you have to fulfill certain requirements like CE certification, ISO certifications, other standards. Then once you have that, the next big step is you have to conduct clinical studies, like really for a drug, like an RCT, randomly controlled trial, to show some initial evidence. Even for the preliminary listing in Germany, you need initial evidence, which is a RCT probably, and this probably is with a dozen or few dozen of patients, and then you have to go through a review process, which you also mentioned. So taken all together, easily 2 years, I would say. We are probably 60-70% down this road on our journey. But again, you can see it positively, negatively, but you are putting something into the system which is reimbursed by payers' money. So it should, in my view, it's fair that they ask for evidence and certain show me the proof, so to say. Mm-hmm. And this also, for me, distinguishes at the end of the day what I call digital homopathy, that apps which claim that they have an impact, distinguish them from apps that really shows an impact. This is probably also important to convince HCPs to prescribe it, because I know it from the pharma days, back in the days, that you always went with the latest publication to the prescribing physician and say, look, this new cancer drug, let's say, is, let's say, improving survival rate, so you probably would want to prescribe it. And the same is for digital therapeutics. You come with the latest data, with your RCT, and convince an HCP to prescribe it. Mm-hmm. This is how it should be in the medical world, in my view.
Definitely. What are the costs that a company is facing in those 2 years, or let's say 3 years?
Quite a bit. So, I mean, of course, it's not as high as in the biotech world, where you have, lab work and so forth, and also the studies are smaller, but a few millions for sure.
Mm-hmm. So, compared to the pharmaceuticals area, where you have the big pharma companies that have a lot of funding, a lot of resources to develop new medicines, maybe also new digital therapeutics, those are huge hurdles for small innovation teams like startups that are preventing us from getting more prescribed apps or other digital solutions. Is there a way around this? Can we accelerate innovation in this field?
At the end of the day, there's a trade-off, right? I mean, each shortcut comes with a probably shortcoming, right? If you say, look, I cut, for example, the clinical trial, then what is then the package of evidence you bring to the table to convince an HCP? You could argue you take real-world data. You just do an uncontrolled observational study if you want, and some regulators might accept this. In Germany, probably not. In some other countries, maybe. So this could be a shortcut where you say, look, I compile all sorts of real-world data. You could argue, do you need all sorts of regulatory standards? Do you need to be a medical device? Yes, no. Do you need all sorts of ISO certifications? These are all steps that prolong the journey, that make the journey more expensive. But at the end of the day, as I said, the regulators do this also for a reason. They say, look, this comes, if you tick all the boxes, then we know you have a certain standard in quality, in data security, in data privacy, but also in evidence. And only then we make the community of payers pay for your solution. I think this is the fundamental idea why regulatory agencies like the BfArM in Germany do this in their fairness. I also sometimes are not super happy about whatever each step they are doing, but to put myself into their shoes, this is where they come from. That they say, look, we are in charge of the payers' money at the end of the day, and if you would give access to everything in the payers' market, then every, as I call it, digital homeopathy would get reimbursed, which again, you would also not feel comfortable not knowing probably what kind of solution you have in your hands, and is this working, is it safe, and so forth. And this is where you have a regulatory body ensuring at least a minimum standard, so to say. But yes, there's a trade-off, and it should not stifle innovation at the same time, which sometimes might be the case, and we have to be careful that this is not happening as well.
Yep. I mean, apart from regulatory quality reimbursement, the access to patients and physicians is also a huge problem for both small and larger companies. Marin and Manuel, do you have any best practices for teams that want to work closer together with HCPs and with patients?
A lot. Yeah, I think first could be start first. So it's like really, I really hate the term beta user, because I think beta user is way too late in the process of building a medical solution in the end. It's like really, also with this discussion, do I have to be a medical device? What if you are starting together in co-creation with the patient? Prove that you have that you serve an unmet need, prove that you really have a solution that is used by patients, and then go the step. Because in the end, it's like you need them anyway, because as you have also mentioned before, if you have done all of these steps and afterwards no one prescribed you or are using or want to use you, what is it worth in the end? So therefore, I would really suggest, please, get from the first day on in contact with patients, work with them, make market research, make interviews, have focus groups, so complete co-creation, advantage and therefore you would also serve for the later product, I think.
With how many patients should a solution be in contact on a regular solution provider?
It totally depends on the stage. So I think in the beginning, it's totally fine if you have like a little focus group from different angles that you work with, because it's also like, I know it's a challenge to work with patients. You have to, there are technicians and there are patients, and they're not really so often speaks the same language. So therefore it's totally fine to start with patients that are well trained to work in medical device and to give feedback and to have this. And there, I think in every chronic condition you have really like patient leads and patient ambassadors you can easily work with. There are also some agencies out there working in this field, connecting you with patients as a startup, also as a solution. And then I would suggest grow this number on the way in the end to really have a robust, diverse feedback on your solution.
Mm-hmm.
I was just thinking, I'm receiving lots of mail every day in my practice showing me new studies on drugs and new indications and things and new formulations. But I can't remember one mail about a digital solution. So as a physician, through this standard marketing method, I have not been approached yet. So for me, it was always myself looking for, okay, what could I do? What could I use for this or for this indication, for this problem? So I do not have an answer because I have not ever been approached once.
They know all your name now.
Okay.
You can email him. You can email him.
Manuel, I can follow up. If you don't have an answer, I have the next question for you from the audience. What are your criteria to select a solution like the bracelet you mentioned?
I think my first and the very most thing I'm looking for is usability for me as a physician and for the patient. So what do I need to set it up, to configure it, to get it running, to retrieve the data, to look at the data? And what I'm also looking for is to really integrate the patient. So is the patient also able to like see the data, get ownership of the data, and like to get insight? Like as I said, for me the most important thing is, do I get more or less instant feedback? So if I do something, if I take a drug every day, I want to know, is it working? So as a diabetic, you go to your GP or your endocrinologist every 3 or 6 months, and blood is taken, and you see, okay, what is your A1C, and how was your CGM data? Let's see. So you have measurements, and you see, did you adhere to therapy? I don't like this word really. But did you take medication? Yeah. Did you follow the steps? And so you can take the next steps. So, and also for any digital solution, I wanted to be able to give feedback to not only me as a physician, but also to the patients. Okay, so now what changed? So maybe if I take my blood pressure and the app is telling me to go walk more, to be more mindful, to reduce stress. So am I seeing this, and am I being shown trends? And can I, from a psychological view then, make the connection and then integrate this in my routine? Yeah. This is, for me, it's key.
I think this is the main problem, that so many digital solutions also now helping with behavior change. Main driver of everything, and behavior change takes time. I think also in diabetes we so often see startups making clinical trials for 3 months, and we're like, okay, 3 months do not show behavior change. This comes if it's getting hard after 6 months or even beyond, because we are all human beings. It just takes time. And if you're then, as a patient, and this is a pity I think for HCPs, as for the patient, if I expect a digital solution to really work fast or to show me some results faster they will then lose of track muscles. Yeah.
But maybe just, I'm not sure which companies you talked about. In fairness, again, this is probably because in Germany the reimbursement period is only 3 months.
Yeah.
Right? So you have only to show efficacy over a 3 months period.
Yep.
So it doesn't help if you have a 6 months, 9 months, 12 months trial if you only get reimbursed for 3 months. So this might also, how shall I say, wrong incentives sometimes induce a certain behavior, and you only do, of course, what you are supposed to do or have to do. But I'm with you. I mean, behavior change is a longer journey, and should take longer. But as a startup, again, you only do what you have to do, and probably not much more beyond, at least to get to the first base, so to say. And then
for
to the next
Swiss
level.
point of view, have solved a question of mine for a long time. Okay, good to know.
So now we're moving more into the direction of the Q&A. So if anyone from the audience has questions, you can raise your hand. We have microphones with Ursula and with Rahel.
I'll stand up. You know that we're with Novartis, and they have a history with pear therapeutics, which went pear-shaped. My question is, how do we get the pharma engaged with apps and medications so they be used together? Because I think it's still this issue of many of these apps being considered medical devices, which is not their business.
It's a good question. I mean, I know many startups that try to collaborate with big pharma. It's also quite the challenge for them. And I also know that quite some companies are investing themselves in getting to those capabilities or collaborating with service providers. And I think also the big pharma companies, they are overwhelmed, or the business development or innovation officers, they are overwhelmed by the number of people that want to collaborate with them. And I think one needs to establish very good structures. I know some initiatives that are doing like AI events where the teams get access to data sets that they would not have access to get in touch and see who knows what they are doing and which solutions are providing good results. So I think there are many different ways of collaboration, but one needs to be a bit explorative and maybe, if it's somehow possible, to decrease the paperwork behind it.
Maybe if I can add some thoughts on that, because I was on both sides. I've played on both sides. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to probably solve a major issue for the pharmaceutical company, right? And I think this was probably the issue with the pear therapeutic topic, that at the end of the day, this was a nice to have thing for Sando at the day, but not really a must have. And if you look at a company like Novartis, I mean, they make 30, 40, 50 billion of revenue, depending on what you count as part of Novartis these days. But if you have a 30 billion, let's say, revenue base, and you have a digital therapeutic which brings you, let's say, 20, 30 million revenue per year, you can't put your effort on this type of asset, so to say. But if this asset helps you to solve a major problem in your core business, that's why I brought this Entresto example, where Entresto, one of the key value drivers for Novartis at the day, was facing a genericized environment, and you had to launch it into this environment. How do you do this? Potentially only if you complement this with a technological solution, which shows the added value of this medication. But then again, at the end of the day, the value comes from the medication, from the core business, and the technology is an add-on. And the same is what you mentioned probably. If you use technology which helps in the R&D process, then yes, it's solving a core issue if you want a pharmaceutical company. But a digital therapeutic as add-on business, at least for the big pharmaceutical companies, I have difficulty to see this as a future business model. For smaller, yes. If it's making a significant part of your P&L, then if it's, let's say, 10% or so, then they say, okay, this is a nice add-on to my business. But to a Novartis, you have to be a multi-billion-dollar revenue potential to be a significant part of the business, right? And this is probably one of the issues why those digital therapeutics don't really fit to the big pharma companies. To the mid-sized companies, yes, but the big ones, I'm a bit questionable about this.
Thank you. Any more inputs, Maren, Manuel? No. So then I want to move to the next question. They're asking for their 3 key advices to health tech startups building apps on prescription. Let's keep it with 1 key advice from each one of us, okay?
One, okay. So for health
Tech
startup.
apps on prescription, yes.
Prove your unmet need early in the beginning.
Immediate feedback to the patient, to the user.
It depends where you come from, but if it's really a totally new space for you, I would say really try to understand the entire set of requirements that is really needed to play in this space. Because my view is that some are really, let's say, surprised in a negative way what is required to play in the app on the prescription field. This is really not just developing an app, it's much, much more. Right?
And I would add to what Maren said is proof that you have traction, that what you're building is really needed in the market. It's very hard to prove this if you are not on the market yet, or if you're not allowed to be on the market. So get letters of intent, get partnerships with insurances, with pharmaceutical companies or other big player, so that also everybody around you believes that what you're doing is highly impactful, and that you could start selling it tomorrow. If you can prove this as a startup, you're way ahead from most of the other developers I know. Okay, we have many other questions. One is about AI, actually. And it asks, if I can find it, what is the role of AI and what are the inherent risks? How can non-deterministic AI be approved by the regulator? Does anyone have experience on this?
Look, I mean, I'm not the AI expert here, to be very frank and open, but if you look these days what ChatGPT can and cannot do, right? I mean, ChatGPT, how should I phrase it now? Politically correct or nicely. It sounds very convincing, the results, but oftentimes they are wrong or kind of totally bogus, right? So you can have this if you write a marketing text or whatever, it doesn't matter. But if you do the same in the medical space, you don't want that, right? You don't want a text or some sort of advice that sounds plausible, but is totally made up. And I think this is the big risk where we're at the moment with AI, because they're using probabilistic language models that sound like as if somebody has thought about this, but yeah, they're not. And therefore, we have also in our solutions, for example, chatbots used, but for good reasons. They are not ChatGPT based, because we are, at the end of the day, I said we are a medical device responsible for the type of outcome of the chatbots, and therefore we are using, I would say, more decision tree type of logic, which is maybe a bit more boring, but much more reliable. And I think this is the big challenge. And there's also now some paths to get AI regulated as medical devices, but this is to my understanding, a big challenge, because you need reference models, and if your model gets trained and evolves over time, then how can you compare this to your reference model? There's ways to do that, but it's not so easy. I'm not saying this is impossible, but I would say this is probably a very big challenge to get AI really used as medical tool. If it's just helping in processes, this is different. If it's used for diagnostic purposes and so forth, you want to make sure that you don't get, let's say, false positives or false negatives induced by AI. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I have also another angle of this, because I've seen around 300 pitch decks a year. And I have the feeling, so in the last years, it comes more and more that startups want to solve problems with AI that was not solvable before. And we have the feeling they are also not yet solvable. So I will not be the magic ingredient to make your medical device or to your digital solution work if it's not working before. It could be a huge factor in better, in improvement, but I have the feeling so many startups want to use it as this magical ingredient, and this I have not seen happening yet.
I mean, also because the health technology or the health field in general, it's such a delicate matter, right? You don't want to do anything wrong, or people could die. And this is also why the regulatory system is built for the solutions not to change anymore after they have been approved. And this is in direct conflict with the principle of AI that can keep on learning and improving. But if you don't know what the outcomes will be of an AI product, and it has even the slightest chance of giving someone wrong advice that could lead to disease or death or something else, we will have a hard time getting this through the current regulatory system.
But maybe one other perspective. So I'm always thinking about what do you compare to? So I'm a physician, and I'm far from perfect, and not everything I say might be the absolute truth. I'm doing my best guess, and I'm doing my working diagnosis, and I work on it. But I'm not a god. I'm a doctor. So for the AI, I remember we once had a project for teledermatology. So we had patients with moles that were assessed via imaging, and an AI was looking at it on an algorithm and saying, okay, is this a suspect for a malignancy or is it not? And so after a couple of months, we had seen the first numbers, and it was like it had like a maybe 90% sensitivity, and everyone was like, "Oh wait, so we're missing 10%. Okay, we have to stop this." and then I'm happy we had some people on our team that really put this into perspective, because what is the sensitivity of a GP doing this? Not a dermatologist, but a GP is like 60-something%. So the AI is so much better at this, but still not perfect. So what do we do with that? Do we say, okay, it's not perfect, we can't use it? Or do we say, okay, we need to find the correct setting, or we have to know what is the limits and move inside the limits? So I'm open for support from AI as a physician, knowing neither I nor the AI are perfect.
Thank you. I think there's another question from the audience.
I just had a question. Paratherapeutics was already mentioned. They were a pioneer in this whole area of digital therapies. I think their first therapy, they had the first therapy approved by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, I believe, in 2017. They now are bankrupt. They went out of business. They weren't able to get enough prescriptions. They had built up an organization anticipating high volumes, and the volumes didn't arrive, and so they went out of business. A lot of other startups that are still struggling in the US in this area, I think, have decided that they need to go around the physicians and around the payers and go directly to consumers because they feel like that's the only chance they have at creating revenues quickly. And I guess my question is, do you think that's a viable solution? I know that the market conditions in Europe are different from what they are in the US because there are more single payer models in Europe than there are in the US, where you have a whole array of payers that you have to deal with. But I guess I'm wondering, is this a solution that would help the whole industry get going, or is it headed down a dead-end street?
I personally believe it very much depends on which therapy area you're in, right? So for some therapy areas, even in the DACH region, people are more used to be in direct contact or also pay out of pocket if it's direct to consumer, like in dental or like beauty surgery or something like that. And I think it's also a very cultural question, right? I mean, I think in the US, people are more used to having those direct interactions with like digital. And as we discussed earlier, here people are used to go to their doctors and get prescribed a people tend to be very skeptic if they don't hear this from a healthcare professional. So I think there's no general answer to your question, which is also another reason why it's so important to do market validation, to go into the market, speak with the different stakeholders, figure out the intention to use and the willingness to pay, and many other aspects, which is why the connection to the patient and the physicians are so important.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think Achille tried the other way, right? They started as a app on prescription, reimbursed company, then moved to the consumer path, and they also were not successful at the end of it. At least they got now acquired at a, I would say, valuation that was not worth their effort. So I would say there's no golden way or not one way to success. You have to probably look into each market case by case and do the best business model or business, let's say, setup that is appropriate for this market. And as you said rightly, I think in the DACH region is probably, unfortunately, if you want a reimbursed, let's say, regulatory approved path, but you could also look on a more global level. Are there certain regions, countries that are more favorable to what you are saying, like an out-of-pocket, let's say, opportunity, and you have to find your best mix. But I think you also made a very important point while saying that you should align your operations with your, let's say, revenue expectations. And I think the big mistake all of those companies made, at least from the outside, what I was observing, is that they have built a much too big operations in anticipation of the revenue, and they were never making any. Well, you don't make profit anyway. I mean, you're not cool if you make profit. This is not cool these days. But jokes aside, they were so misaligned in terms of costs versus revenue that this wasn't a sustainable business, and they realized probably too late that they have to cut costs and so forth, and then probably they were already too much down the road. And then of course, if a major partnership like Novartis doesn't work out, then of course all of a sudden you're losing X% of your revenues anyway. So what I'm trying to say is that probably they were a bit too ambitious in building their organization, and they would have survived if they would be a bit more cautious and careful. And maybe coming back to your initial figures, Zero, that you quoted, in Germany there are certain companies in the DiGA apps on prescription market that are quite successful. There are some examples of unsuccessful companies, correctly, yes, but there are also some examples of very successful companies which, in my view, have not overgrown their operations and hence have a profitable, sustainable business model, at least to the date. That might change, but you can find a sustainable model, I would say, but you have to really be cautious and tailor it and adapt it, I would say, to the market condition.
Interesting enough, I know many teams that are thinking about going to Africa or to South America, India, because all the systems are not really as strong in place there, and you can help shaping them. And there's a huge potential if you don't need to break up an already existing system for the future, which is also an interesting topic maybe for another time. And I think we're at the end. Yes, we're already 1 minute over. So should I end the session by myself, Ursula, or will you do it, Rahel?
Yes, I'm happy to say a few words. Thank you very much for sharing your expertise and giving us a glimpse in your everyday life and the hurdles you're trying to overcome. Thanks, Maren, Manuel, Ulrich, and Zero for being here tonight. Big thank you also again to Novartis for sponsoring this series. We have 2 more events to go this year, for sponsoring the location, and of course also the apéro following the event. I would like to thank Ursula, my colleague, for pushing this series and for bringing together this amazing set of speakers. Looking forward to the next events. A few words also from my side. I mentioned the community we're building. We also provide the space for it. So if you know a startup, or if you have a startup and you're looking for space, we already have a few cool companies with us, such as Dokyo. So yes, come talk to me during the apéro. And thanks everyone for being here. Thanks everyone for joining us online. And I'm looking forward to good discussions later on. Thank you very much.